Hello and welcome to the Created Economy. I'm Ken Yeung, and to my right now on screen is my friend Greg Narain. Hello, Greg. Well, wait, now you switched, so now you're gonna make you bastard. Why are you changing it up? People are gonna get confused now.
This is a family-friendly show, Ken.
Since when? I don't have the beep button on my Rodecaster, so I can't figure that out yet. What the whole thing is. But anyways, thanks everyone for joining. This is the latest episode of the Creator Economy. It's our weekly interview series where we chat with the players from the creator economy at large and discuss the key topics impacting the growth of the industry. You can find every new episode on our YouTube channel and on social media every Wednesday. And you can find more about the show at created.show. You can also check out our blog at createdeconomy.com for all the long form content and insights and highlights from each episode. Hopefully I can get around to that on a quicker cadence than I normally am. And as always, follow us on social media everywhere at Created Economy. We're on Twitter. We are on YouTube. Be sure to smash that like and subscribe button for more videos from us. And you can find out more about the news that we curate on Flipboard at flipboard.com/@createdeconomy. All right. And why don't we do this? We actually have a sponsor for this episode. And this is actually the first time we're actually do this. So let's see how this goes. Greg, let's run this video in clip for a second.
Hi, my name is Joe Polizzi, founder of Creator Economy Expo, May 2nd through 4th, 2022 at the Arizona Grand Resort in Phoenix, Arizona. If you're a content creator and you're trying to understand how to grow your audience, how to build different and more revenue lines, understand the most innovative content operations, and get your arms around Web3, then CEX is absolutely the event for you. We're limiting the event to 500 content creators this year. And simply put, we put together the most incredible lineup of content entrepreneurs on the planet. If you need to understand the business model of YouTube, we've got Roberto Blake. If you need better writing tips, strategies, and techniques, we've got the one and only Ann Handley. Do you need to learn the business of podcasting? We've got Jordan Harbinger. If you don't understand TikTok or Twitch, we've got Leash Capiche that will show you the way. And we've also got the 5-time New York Times best-selling author, Dan Pink, to close us out. I definitely want to see you there. This is the event for you. CEX.events to sign up. Creator Economy Expo, May 2nd through 4th. I'll see you there.
Cool. And be sure to use the discount code CREATED, CREATED, when you register for CEX 2022, and you can save $200 on your ticket. That's CEX.events. Use CREATED as your discount code. All right. Without further ado, why don't we bring on our guest at this time? Two people who are creating are the founders of a service called Every, formerly known as the Everything Bundle. They actually have an interesting story to tell because they started off of Substack, and now they're a writer collective. And very interested to know more about what they're doing and their insights into the creator economy. All right, and with that, bring on board Dan Shipper and Nathan Baschez. How's it going, guys?
Hello. Good.
It's good. Thank you for having us.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for joining us. So I think first things first, why don't we start off and hear more about
question, Ken. Isn't writing dead? No, just kidding.
No, see, that's every time. So that's the thing, Greg. Every time we have somebody that's involved in writing. So as a former reporter and blogger, I love writing. But we've had people on the show, and Greg always bashes on writing. He's like, oh, when the cool kids are, cool kids use Tumblr. Like, who says who? Like,
all right, come on. We can all agree Tumblr is not writing, right?
All right. Well,
I will say, right, I have that same fear, but I just feel like, at least on our little corner of the internet, we still got a thing going on with writing.
I do not.
I'm hoping that stays for a little while.
In fact, like our long posts perform better. It's pretty wild. Like when we ship something short, the audience is kind of like, I don't know, like this is fine. And then when we ship like a monster post, they're like, standing ovation. So it's
We're
you know,
filtering for the smart ones, you know.
I was a
exactly. We just have a
blogger-
superior audience. That's what
I was a
we want.
blogger like 2003, I think, or 4, right? It was when I did my first blog post. And there was always this funny thing where you're like, this is the one that everyone's going to love. And yet somehow you never figure out how to write that one, right? Because you're like all these little lines and zingers you have in there and you're like, I love that little sentence. And then guess what? Like no one even cared.
You were writing on parchment back in 2003, dude. Come on. I mean,
The internet equivalent of parchment. Yes. Blogger.com.
R.I.P. blogger.
Wait, it was movable type. It was movable type back then.
Oh wow, that's
yeah.
bringing back some memories.
oh my God. Yeah. Movable type. And then you had 6 apart. Wait, so typepad was part of movable type or 6 apart? I can't remember what the difference was. Anyways,
I don't know.
And then Matt
Before
Mullen
my time, I was not even, I was.
wow, thank you, Nathan. Before your time. It's like I don't know what this MySpace thing is. What you talked about?
I did have a blogger account though. Ages. I do remember having a blogger account, but I believe I moved on to movable type because it was way more fun to use.
Yeah, and now everything's back to simplicity. So
let's go back to where Ken was going.
always talking about nostalgia on the show. No, but Dan and Nathan, why don't you give us an intro about who you guys are and what Every is doing and why should we all care?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll talk a little bit about Every. We can talk about who we are. Every is a bundle of business-focused newsletters. So we write newsletters on lots of different topics: productivity, strategy, the creator economy, crypto, and we put them all in one place where readers pay one price and they get access to all of the writing that we make. It's different from other kinds of media companies in a couple ways. One is just like editorial focus-wise. We write a lot of long-form analysis and commentary pieces. We want to help readers like see the world in a new way or do their job better. It's really focused on content for practitioners, particularly in tech. Like if you're in tech, we want to write stuff that appeals to you. And then the other thing that's different about it is we're structured a little differently from other media companies. We're structured as what we call a writer collective. And for a writer collective, what we try to do is for writers that we work with be somewhere between working with a big media company like the New York Times and writing on Substack, like independently. On the media company side of things, we give writers the things that you might expect. Like we pay them for the work that we do or that they do. We give them an editor. We give them distribution to an audience. We give them a trusted brand to write with, all that kind of stuff. And then on the kind of like Substack-y side of things, we give writers a lot of the flexibility and freedom that they would get if they wrote alone. So we don't have an editor in the middle who like assigns stories to people. Writers basically get to write about what they want within reason. We also share upside. So we measure how much subscription revenue and ad revenue writers bring in, and we pay them 50% of the profit. And we also let writers leave with their list. So we're not holding writers hostage to like writing with us. So if things don't work out, they can leave. And yeah, so that's like the basic gist of Every. And I think we both came to this. I can talk about me and Nathan can introduce himself, but like we both came to this because I think we both grew up in tech and we both grew up really loving a specific kind of writing and wanting to see more of it in the world. My first company was this company called Firefly. It was a kind of enterprise software company, and I built that over a number of years and sold it. And but like that whole time I was writing and wanted to see more of this. And so we kind of like stumbled into this as a thing that I think we both just wanted to see more of. And it's been really great to get to actually do it ourselves.
Nathan, how did you get started? Like, how did you two meet? Obviously, Nathan, the history in terms of the Everything bundle came out of Substack. I mean, that's where the first platform it was before you branched off into your own or your homegrown platform.
Right. Yeah. So Dan and I had known each other for a long time, and I knew of Dan even before I met him through his writing. And I think he, when we became friends, was like a reader of a lot of stuff that I was working on at the time, and so we always kind of had each other. We were like on each other's lists of like people to work with. And after Dan sold his company and he was kind of like thinking about what he wanted to do next, he reached out to me because I had recently left my job at Substack. I worked at Substack. I was sort of like their first employee. did a lot of like software engineering and design, but I also did random stuff. Like I hosted their podcast, and it's just, kind of like the jack of all trades, employee number one kind of thing. And, I left and I was thinking about what I was going to do next. And I knew I really wanted to still do something. It's funny, at the time that I don't even think the phrase creator economy was like a thing yet. But I knew I wanted to do something with new models where talent could receive a lot more of the upside, from the work they do, and new forms of like discovering great stuff to consume and creating more great stuff. Because I think there's honestly a lack of it on the internet today. Even though there's an abundance of content, there's a lack of amazing content. And so kind of had those things in the back of my head. Was working on a few different projects, and Dan reached out about creating sort of like a network of newsletters focused on business topics. And I was like, yes, this sounds great. This is amazing. So like we basically went full steam ahead, and we decided the first step was, let's just start writing some ourselves. A, because like we want to and it would be fun. B, though, because what better way to convince another writer to work with us than to say we can promote you to an audience? And we didn't really, we had some audience, like a bunch of people signed up when I launched my newsletter, and same thing happened with Dan. But it really helps to also be generating some cash flow, so we had some money we could pay people with, rather than just sort of like out of our own pockets or having to go raise a lot of venture capital. And so we were on Substack for the first like year of the company's life. And it started out with just 2 newsletters. Mine is Divinations, it's about business strategy, and Dan's is Super Organizers, about productivity, but really kind of like the cognitive and emotional stuff that goes on behind productivity. That's a lot more interesting, frankly. So we've kind of been on that front for a while, and then just gradually, kept expanding, adding more writers, working with editors, trying to professionalize the operation and all that. And that's what ultimately led us to getting off of Substack and launching our own platform. It's just the desire to keep pushing the frontier and optimizing the way that we share content with readers.
So does that mean that you, and it seems like you're straddling to some degree here, like being, like a traditional magazine, right? Just sort of like the editorial side of the house, there's a publishing side of the house. New York Times has more engineers than most Silicon Valley startups. Do you view yourselves like competitive, I guess, to Substack, or analogous or complementary? Like, I guess, how do like, I know you mentioned, Dan, like, when folks write for you, is it exclusive, or do they still, write other places? And just kind of curious about that.
Yeah. Oh, go for it, Nathan.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's definitely a little bit competitive, but it's also kind of complementary. And we also just have like a very different strategy. So like some people, they do write with us exclusively. And like, we even have some writers that are like full-time employees. And then other people, they have a Substack and they're trying to grow it, and it works. It's a really good tactic for them to do a guest post with us. We're down for a lot of different ways of working with writers, depending on what they want and what we want and what we can kind of afford to make a bet on at the time. But at the end of the day, like, any given reader's attention at any given moment or any given share of wallet is like, it's a relatively fixed pie. And so to some extent, there's some competitive trade-offs that happen. Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think we're making a different bet too.
Yeah.
I think Substack's bet is if you can make it really easy for people to write and get paid online, and all they have to do is the actual writing, then you can get like hundreds of thousands or millions of people to write lots of stuff, and the best stuff is gonna win, and it'll be across lots of different topics, and it just all of it kind of like works in that way. I think our bet is a little bit more like, especially if you want to do something premium, especially for like business type topics, having a kind of like a little bit of a walled garden where there's a lot of different kinds of writing on it, hopefully eventually, and there's a lot of different voices on it. But that there's like a minimum quality bar, and that you go there for a specific kind of business content, that group of people, if you can get all the voices together, then that group of people will outperform, for people who want really deep, in-depth business writing, will outperform like just going to any random Substack, because the Substack brand, it's, first of all, Substack is great, and I don't think our ambition is not to like kill Substack or anything like that. I think there's a lot of room to coexist, but the Substack brand gets pulled down to the extent that like to their lowest common denominator writer, and it becomes like a less special thing when there's lots of people writing on Substack, and it becomes also like a less you're a little bit like, I don't know, all the most popular Substackers are kind of controversial. Like, do I really want to be involved in that as a writer. And for us, we can kind of like control for a lot of those things where it means something to be writing on Every, which means that we can make a promise to readers about what they're going to get, which means that it's a kind of appealing value proposition for a writer. Because if you're a writer who doesn't have an audience yet and you go into Every, we can kind of transfer some of that trust to you, and you'll grow quickly. So one of our writers, Evan Armstrong, he writes Napkin Math, and he's been working with us for about a year. Before he came to us, he had no audience and had never written professionally, and he just quit his job like last week to like be a full-time writer, and he can do that on Every, supported by reader subscriptions and advertising revenue.
Yeah, and his list is like what, crossed 20,000, so
exactly
pretty good for like 1 year into the game, starting at zero.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. And like obviously like that's really hard to do. Like Evan worked his butt off and published an essay every week with a full-time job to get there, which is like, it's really, really, really deeply impressive. But also, you know, we were able to distribute him to an audience that trusted that like his writing would be good and would give him a chance because they were getting it from Every. And that's something that you can't really get from Substack, at least as it is right now.
Exactly. And all the other writers were kind of collectively working their butts off, which brings more people in the door, which is more people that can now hear about Evan's post. So it's this mutually beneficial arrangement, which is the great thing about bundling.
Yeah, actually, I guess I have a follow-up question, Ken, if it's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, you know, HuffPost sort of started this, you know, the original, the original HuffPost was like contributor pieces, right? Like,
yeah.
And I've seen this model rise quite prominently now, like, you know, Forbes, like all the magazines sort of went into this like farming business of some kind, right? Like they just took other people and said, hey, you write this stuff, right? I really like what you guys are doing though, because, you know, as someone who was building into the creator economy as well, I feel like, the job that we don't really address is enough for creators is really just the operational part, right?
Right. Yeah, totally.
And it sounds like you guys are doing a good job of that, like especially as tuned to like what a writer needs, because it's very different to say like you just be good at this thing, which then robs you of the potential to be good in a lot of things, right? Like you know, like so you know, it's like great, I'll make it easy for you to write, but then I'm making you crappy at business, right? Like, and so you actually don't learn what it takes to be successful or how to like get escape velocity or how to grow your opportunity because you become highly dependent on just this one thing. And I feel like that is like the risk like Substack more plays, or right, like they don't have this visibility that you're offering and sort of this cleanliness around it, as well as like a, you know, you're in it together kind of with your writers, it seems.
Right. I think also just what we've discovered is a lot of writers, probably most of them, don't actually really want to like have to do customer support and optimize onboarding funnel and experiment with paid acquisition. And they're just not going to do that stuff because it's not that interesting. It's really complicated and it's expensive if you screw it up, you know, or like selling ads. Who wants to do a whole bunch of cold emails unless you're the kind of person who like lives for that, right? And there are people who live for that. And it's like, okay, great. This is how the economy works. There's specialization and gains from trade. And it's wonderful when you can kind of like put a whole bunch of people who are different shaped Lego pieces together into something that's greater than the, you know, sum of the parts. And so for instance, like advertising, this is another, I would say, pretty big difference between us and Substack is like, we love advertising. We don't think it's killing the world. And we're very happy to be doing it. And we do tasteful advertising, right? Like, I mean, Dan gets stressed out when I'm like, oh, this ad is too long, or like, I don't know about this advertiser, they're a little bit janky. But like, you know, like we, at the end of the day, like we're doing ads and we're very happy to be doing ads. And so, you know, this is another thing where it's like, if you're a writer, do you also want to be doing cold outreach to a bunch of advertisers and analyzing who's advertising on newsletters right now and what the average CPM is that people are getting and what kind of testing out different formats for the advertising and the creative? Like nobody wants to do that, you know, except for the people who love to do that. And so they should do it, you know, that's great. It works out.
Yeah. And I agree with you entirely. I think my point is just more that there's something beneficial about letting them know it's there though, right? Like, because like, it felt like there was a crop of people who came in and are like, you don't need to know any of this stuff. And like, actually, I think you should know it to protect yourself, right? Like you shouldn't do it. Don't do a thing that's not like the best use of your time, right? But not knowing it is also like, I think we've been in this educational gap for some time, like as creators step into business in varying ways.
I think maybe what you're getting at, and we've seen this a lot, which is with writers who are more used to writing for like traditional publications, yeah, I think that there's been a culture of like you shouldn't actually pay attention to the business, and it's like maybe bad for you to do to
Right.
know how the business
Right.
works, because it'll like
Sure.
affect the quality of the content, or like, you know, whatever, like all that kind of stuff. And I think there are good reasons for that culture, but it also, yeah, it creates this dependence on the publication on the part of the writer, and it works to the benefit of the publishing, to the media company in a lot of ways, to say that. And I think what you find with more online native writers is that like you're just used to knowing what a funnel is, because like that's what Twitter is, you know, like
Right.
you're used to this because you've been doing it like since you were young or whatever. And there's much more of an understanding of like how the business is going to work end to end, what it means to convert paying subscribers, or like to split advertising revenue, or all these like kind of questions that I think are more natural to internet writers, that writers from traditional publications haven't historically had to deal with, and it's a little bit harder for them to know how to do it. And so I do think you're right. It's really important for people to understand how this stuff works, and hopefully with every like when you publish, you're connected enough to the results to be like, okay, like, yeah, it drove subscriptions or it didn't, and like that's at least an important input into my process, and I know I'm going to get paid more for it. So like I'll probably try to drive subscriptions, you know, balanced with doing stuff that I think is really high quality.
The flip side, though, the flip side is that that also makes you way more protective about your audience, right? You're like, nah, I don't want to write about this junk, right? Like, I don't want this sponsor here. I don't want this kind of thing here. I don't want to be associated with this stuff, right? Like that. Right. That's what I've seen. That's what I admire about creators, right? Is they're like, they actually are very aware of like what their real core asset is, right? And so they're like, no, that's not going to work. That's not going to work here, right? Because I don't believe in it. And
yeah, I think you have the luxury, if you work for a traditional publication, you have the luxury of like writing for it and then also believing that advertising is bad. And if you are more online, like you're a little bit more like, oh yeah, some ads are bad, but like this is also how it pays my bills, you know? And that's kind of an interesting difference or thing to see happen for people who are writing. Is that being much closer to the business. And there are a lot of positive benefits. There's also, you can argue there are negative benefits. It's like, or there are negative aspects to it, and it's about balancing it. But I think ultimately we believe it's better for the writers and for the readers and for the kind of content that gets created.
So let me do a deeper dive in terms of the overall user experience, right? I think over the past decade or so, from blogs that you would like automatics, WordPress has kind of proliferated. It's a huge part of the industry. A lot of the big websites are powered on WordPress. Then obviously, as we're joking earlier, I mean, you had Blogger, you had Tumblr. There's plenty of these writing platforms that exist, right? And those are different from every, in terms of they're the content management systems. They allow you to publish online. Then now you have this renaissance of newsletters with Substack and MailChimp, and everybody says subscribe to my newsletter, blah blah blah, right? And Medium has been around touting almost in a similar manner, at least a philosophy standpoint, what you are doing from at every. They want to promote knowledgeable insights from credible writers, or at least that's kind of what their foundational has been. That doesn't happen. There's a lot of garbage that has proliferated on Medium. It just wound up being this blogger platform. How do you measure, how do you view Every versus all of these other platforms, right? And what is enticing people to use your platform to publish beyond the, and I'm talking more specifically bells and whistles.
Sure.
And then how does that aid, like how do you help with discoverability of someone's content and avoid the content farm label that has befallen Forbes, HuffPo, and other publications?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is we're really not a platform. So like we happened to build our own platform because the way that we want to create our distribution as a publication is different from what any like Ghost, Substack. There wasn't anything out there that ticked the boxes that we wanted to tick because we're a new kind of publisher, but we're still a publisher. So like in some ways, like, you know, bells and whistles wise of the platform, I mean, like Dan is the bell and I'm the whistle, right? Like you talk to us and we tell you about like how we can promote your post, and like we give you edits, and, you know, we're hiring an editor, and like, you know, the other bell and whistle is like distribution to our whole list, which is like approaching 50,000 people. And like, there's a whole bunch of other benefits that it's just not even in the same category. It's not even in the same conversation as a platform, because basically we're like, hey, for the subset of stuff that we think will work for our audience, which is like a tiny, tiny sliver of everything that could be published on the internet, we're willing to pay you. We're willing to promote you to a whole bunch of people. We're willing to give you lots of feedback, you know, like all those things. So it's just a different category of thing.
Got it. So what would you say in terms of because Nathan, you have worked at Substack.
Yep.
And you saw a lot of attention being given to newsletters. And that kind of gave rise to, hey, everyone wants to subscribe. They want to have it direct to your inbox. They will like the long form type of content. But everything in social media or in terms of the tech trends these days suggests people want or are addicted to shorter form content, 280 characters, 30-second videos, like ephemeral content.
Mm-hmm.
What was the gamble? What was your thinking behind taking that gamble, saying, yes, we want to do long form content? And Every has published quite a bit of exceptional long form content. Case in point, Nathan, you published quite recently a whole piece on Substack, a long piece on Substack. So what was the thinking behind saying, yeah, we're going to go in on long form? We think that's what people really, really want, as opposed to, all right, just 200, 400 word posts, and that's what we'll give people.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really think of them as substitutes. I'm really curious to hear what Dan will have to say about this, because we haven't talked about this in a while, but I love short form stuff. Like I consume Twitter all day, but it's like, you know, Twitter is like a little crumb, and it's like you can have a little handful of crumbs, or you can have like a cookie, right? And sometimes you don't have time for a cookie. You just want a little crumb here or there because you're like in between meetings or whatever. But like when you have time for a cookie, maybe you'd rather have that. And like, maybe not. Maybe you just want to spend like an hour on Twitter, which people do. I do that sometimes. But it's like, what am I even talking about on Twitter? Probably stuff that's like a result of these bigger, more coherent pieces that I've consumed that really helped forge my worldview, like books and essays and things like that. So I just think the kinds of things you can communicate longer form are just really different. And there's always going to be a place in the world for them, especially I think as it relates to just making sense of what's going on. You know, like Elon Musk bought almost a 10% stake in Twitter. It was announced today. Like, why? Do you want to read a tweet about that? Because he thinks free speech is important. Okay, great. What does that tell you? Not very much. It leaves you with more questions than it does answers. So you need someone to like really sit you down and like give you a perspective on it. Or at least I do. I feel like I want that. And I think a lot of other people do too. And you can also just convey so much more emotion and personality, and you can tell a story. And it's just a really different and more enjoyable experience to me when I have time. Yeah, I don't think it's going to go away, because visual media or audio is really great at conversations, which can be meandering and you can get tone of voice and back and forth. Visual is great at like, you know, watching a new relationship form, or watching some crazy shit happen or whatever, or watching someone dance. Different mediums have different strengths. I think written words are really great for a set of things that there's never, I don't think any form of video is ever going to beat. It might be bigger than, but I won't completely extinguish it. You know what I mean? And I think that on an absolute basis, writing is bigger than it ever has been, and it will always be bigger. Maybe the growth of video will outpace it, or audio or whatever else, but like, I don't know, who cares? Like, someone else has more toys than me, like whatever. I like writing, you know? Like
I would definitely echo everything that Nathan said. A couple of other things come to mind is like, you can I think you can split things into like, what do people want? What do they want to want? And what will they pay for? And I think if you graphed out like what people want, I think the vast majority of time, you're right. Like, people want to spend time scrolling, just revealed preference. They want to spend time scrolling, but there is part of them that like at a certain time, they do want to like read something like long form and deep. whether that's an article or a book or whatever. And they want to read long form, deep stuff. It's like, it feels more ego aligned to feel like the kind of person that's going to like focus like deeply on something that someone has thought about and crafted or whatever. Even if like, most of the time you don't really live up to that, it's aspirational to do that.
Yeah.
And then that's what they'll pay for too. Because okay, yeah, I can go scrolling through the crumbs, but like if someone asked me to pay $20 a month for that, I'd be like, no, it's trash. I don't want to do that. Like, I'll spend my time on it, that's a very weird trade-off, that you'll spend your time but not your money on it.
Yeah.
But for long form stuff, especially like deep, thoughtful stuff about business, it's much easier to justify to yourself, oh yeah, this is
why super follows. It's got no traction, right? Like
yeah.
what?
Yeah. And just what we find is it works. Like it just does. And that's what we like. So we found this like nexus of like stuff that works, stuff that people pay for, stuff that we like. And that's,
so I guess instead of as alternatives, right, to each other per se though, and Nathan, I think it's a great, sort of analogy, right? I'm kind of curious about, I do video stuff, right? So I'm kind of curious about, are you seeing like augmenting the long form, or are you seeing more omni media creators now, right? So, I think it's great to come and have this, long form written post, but then I'd love to chat about it with my readers, right? Or maybe they're, the New York Times invests tons of money in like visualizations and other things like that, or Vox. And I'm kind of curious just like how you see that ecosystem potentially evolving for every, and just in general, if you have comments or thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we've done a lot. I think first of all, just Twitter, like a lot of it is, it's a funnel, right? You write tweets to get people to read your long form stuff. I think for us, one thing that we found is like you do podcasts to get people to pay for your long form stuff, because people find out about you from Twitter, they read some free stuff, and then they listen to your podcast and they're like, oh, these guys are cool. Like I feel like I know them. I want to pay them. So you can like align all of those different channels or media into a funnel, and that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is, like different media are good for different jobs or explaining different kinds of things. Like the kinds of stuff that you can do in a YouTube video about productivity, it's a little different than what you do in a written interview about productivity, and different people are going to watch it and different people are going to like it for different reasons. So I think like we'll have to do more media and do more channels. We're starting with writing, and we have podcasts, and I think that's where we'll stick for a little while. But even now we have like videos that we put on YouTube of some of the podcasts we record, and that is another channel that we use to get people over to every. So it's like the name of the game of media usually is you got to do something that you do well, but you also have to diversify in terms of like the kinds of things you make and the kinds of ways you monetize it. So I expect that we'll do that more over time.
Yeah. And it's tough because I think there's kind of an explore exploit trade-off problem here where, it's really hard to learn how to do any of these things well. To like have an incredible podcast takes a lot of focus. To have a video that like anyone wants to watch takes a lot of focus. To write a thread, you'd be amazed. You'd think an essay and a thread on Twitter, it's like basically the same thing, right? Actually, totally different thing. Like we suck at writing threads, but we're awesome at writing like essays. And like for us, it's always going to be more profitable in the short run to just try and do another really great essay. That works really well. We know it works. It's worked a lot of times for us. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try and figure out the other things. It's just that we face some short-term disincentives. And so it has kind of naturally corralled us into focusing on writing, and I don't think that's necessarily the wrong move, but I think it's something that probably explains why so many creators tend to be like really great at one channel and then trying to get good at another, but it's not quite the same as their original channel, and I think we have the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because right now you have, at last count, you have what, 750,000 people have read articles on every. Is that accurate?
Probably. I think when I tweeted that, it was just like go to Google Analytics and zoom all the way out and see what it tells me for unique audience members. I could like do the same thing now, but it's it's who really knows, right? Because it's like cookies on people's browsers and stuff. But yeah, something in that ballpark.
But 2,400 paid subscribers, and this is about what, 2 years? Actually, 2 years old now, right? Because you founded the company officially in 2020.
Right.
So a question there is, how are you identifying the writers for this collective? because everything that you have, because you describe yourselves as publishers in a way that you want to promote, like, not garbage quality articles.
Yeah.
You want to foster great writers and show them support so that they can say, you know what, I'm going to quit my day job, as you pointed out with that with that other gentleman, and you're like, hey, they can do this as a full-time, they can be fully participate in this economy. But how do you vet them, or who do you solicit and say, hey, do you want to be a part of this?
Yeah.
And what is your pitch to that person?
Yeah. It's surprisingly easy. You just ask for their SAT score. No, I'm just kidding.
Nice.
I wish it's so hard. It's so, I mean, this is something that I want Dan to speak to more. But the quick thing I'll say is it's just really hard. And this is not, we don't want to sit here and be like, yeah, we've cracked the nut. This is like the main thing that we're focusing on, is how to expand in a thoughtful way that works, and how to build the right kind of onboarding experience for writers. What's the right first step and second step and third step? It's really hard. And I don't honestly even think traditional publications have figured it out. I think they probably just make a lot of full-time offers, and then like a subset of the people drive most of the business. And we haven't raised tons and tons of money, and we don't have a 100+ year history with a giant balance sheet. So we're being more conservative about it, but I think it's just a hard problem. But yeah, I'm curious to hear Dan on this.
Yeah, we've tried lots of different things. We've tried pull, so like people can like submit like applications to work with us or pitch us. We've tried push, like, you know, we do cold reach out to people or reach out to friends with varying levels of success. You know, like I spoke about Evan earlier, who runs Napkin Math, and that was just like he submitted a guest post. We called for guest posts, and he submitted a guest post, and it went great. One of the things that we do, which I think is really, really like an integral part of the process, is we have people, when we work with writers, we just do one post together and we see how it goes, and we send it out to the audience, and we have a way to test. Like, we can send it out to a small percentage of the audiences to see how it does. And then if it does well, we send it out to more. And if we like the person and they like us, then we like do like a larger deal. And so we have ways to kind of like go through a process with a writer where we're testing at each step to understand how the fit is between us and them, and between them and the audience, which has been really helpful. And there's lots of little heuristics that kind of point in the direction of like, this person is probably a good fit. So for example, if they have good tweets, or their tweets are, you can see that their tweets are starting to get more and more engagement and their account is growing, it's a good bet that they're going to be probably a decent fit for us. Having good tweets doesn't necessarily mean you can write essays,
right?
But you probably, like, a lot of them can if they want to.
Yeah.
Another one is like
tryout or something, or is there a tryout or something?
That's kind of like the guest post process.
Okay.
Yeah. We say, hey, like, you want to write a guest post, and usually they say yes, and then we can kind of like judge how it goes from there. I think that there's also just this, like, the way these kinds of personality driven publications work is you have like your personality pillars. And I think right now, like, me and Nathan are like two of the pillars. Evan's another one, Lee's another one. That gives you this kind of like respect bubble of writers that are kind of near you or connected to you on Twitter, that like what you do. And that gives you the opportunity to like kind of get those people into your vortex, you know, and over time, like, as you get bigger as writers, your respect bubble increases, and the amount of people that you can like suck into working with you gets bigger and bigger, and like the diversity gets bigger, and the audience size of the people that you can convince to work with you gets bigger. And so, like, that's kind of the name of the game, is like, you increase your own audience, you increase the amount of people that you can reach, or the amount of people that are kind of within your bubble, and then you try to attract people who have similarly sized bubbles to join, and that increases everything for everybody. And we're still figuring out how to do that, and it's really challenging to do it in a way where the topics match, and the quality level is high enough, or quality, like what we think is good, matches. But that's the general strategy.
I have two kind of questions that kind of go together, but in a weird way. I guess number one is, are there topic areas that you're looking to sort of expand into, right? Obviously, so in case anyone out here maybe is a good fit. And then I know you mentioned you're a couple of years old now, and I'm kind of curious, like, just are you bootstrapping it, right? Like entirely? And the reason I ask is more so because I feel like the independence of being able to bootstrap like affords you the opportunity to like make different choices than the hamster wheel of, fundraising traditional rounds. And so I'm kind of curious, like sometimes the markets you pick to go to might be driven by like external forces and, other things, right? So I'm just kind of curious about that mix.
Yeah, the way that we raised money for the business. We raised it from a venture firm, Bedrock. They're the lead investors in The Athletic. And we also raised from a bunch of angels. But the way that we raised money was very specifically like, hey, we think this can be a big business. We're not sure if it can be a big business on a venture timeline. We'd like to raise a little bit of money to see. But you should probably expect that we'll find what you usually find for a media business, which is like it's probably not going to be a big business on a venture timeline. And so we raise in that way, which gives us a lot of control over like the writers we work with and how we expand. And there's basically zero pressure for us to do anything except try to make the highest quality product we can and get as big as we can without blowing everything up, which is kind of an ideal position to be in.
We don't need to pivot to video.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't need to pivot to video.
Wait, you're not pivoting to the metaverse? Isn't that what everyone's doing these days? Just go
right.
to the metaverse?
Aren't we already in the metaverse? Like this is the metaverse, right?
We're all in Roblox now. This podcast is now on Roblox.
Yeah, I don't see how a 3D environment makes what we're doing right now any better. So, putting it out there.
You're not squinting hard enough. Come on.
Yeah, I guess not.
It makes it better for Mark Zuckerberg, actually. That does. I can see that.
That's true. Yeah,
so go ahead.
But in terms of topics, I think actually we're actually refocusing in on some of the original topics that we started with, which is productivity and strategy, and looking for writers that are kind of more deeply in that space. We've realized it kind of works a lot better when you can really have a concentrated set of writers where when a reader comes to Every, they kind of like know what they're going to get more or less. It helps, like if I'm writing stuff that's similar to 3 other writers, like we can really kind of play off of each other in this really nice way. Whereas if you spread too wide too quickly, it just diffuses the power of what's going on a little bit. And it makes our ability to, like, for example, like cross-post articles between lists and promote writers to the readers of other writers. It makes all that a little bit more difficult. And we have a platform that's, we call ourselves a publisher, but we have a platform that does that or figures out which posts to send to which readers and all that kind of stuff. Right now, it's not really algorithmic. It's a little bit more manual, but we can do that. And over time, the ambition is to cover a broad variety of topics and be a little bit more expansive. But I think for now, the main thing is finding writers that are in those 2 zones, those productivity and strategy zones, which we kind of think about as like, how does like business work, and how does like power and the economy work, and then the other zone is like, how do I work, and like how should I live, and I think that's where we're focusing right now.
Right. And how can I work with people?
Yeah.
And how can people work with me?
Yeah.
Definitely. Is there another reason for that? Could it be because other verticals might be super saturated with other publishers? So for example, why when you started Every and you identified those 2 verticals, why was like news not one of them? Why was lifestyle not one of them? Right. Obviously the business and the technology side and the productivity side are amazing. There's a lot of opportunity for them. Is it possible that those 3 verticals are areas where people who read that content are more likely to be invested in longer form content, perhaps?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think we just kind of went to start with writing the kind of stuff that we wanted to write, that we felt like was, I guess to some degree, it's about market saturation because we felt like it was missing. I think that it's really hard to get people to pay for news if what you're doing is kind of regurgitating a story that somebody else broke. And even if you can get a scoop, which is like really hard, and that's not our game at all. I mean, there's a lot of people who are already trying to get scoops. We could have started that business and then 2 years in, Ben Smith wants to start his new business. He's just like the scoop master, right? Like the New York Times, there's people who are going to be better at scoops than us. But what I feel like is really missing is, one thing we haven't talked about much is kind of like business books, right? Like the business section of the bookstore. It's got it's kind of the genre of content that we do, where it's more zoomed out. It's more telling you a story maybe about a company, or it's more giving you some principles and some frameworks of how to understand how the world works or how you work. And I think essays are a great form factor for that. I think they're a better form factor, honestly, for most people than books. And you can string together essays over a long period of time, and it adds up to a more meaningful and interesting collection to me than like a one-off book. And I think it's an ascendant form. I think the internet is just more native to essays, where it's kind of like chapters, but it's a little bit more self-contained. Yeah, I just think that there's something missing there. And we started out by pretty quickly trying to expand and having really different types of essays or stories that we publish. And we just found that it was hard to get them to work because the audience is just kind of a little bit different for that. So, if we have a new writer and they do something kind of different and we promote them to our existing audience, it doesn't work as well as if we have a writer who does something that's more similar to what we do and we promote them to our audience. So just economically, there's an incentive to stay close to the core. I think another thing is, you can think of it a little bit like a two-sided marketplace, where if we have all the best stuff about strategy and productivity, then it's easier to get the best, readers for that, which makes it easier to get the best writers for that. And it's kind of this self-reinforcing loop. And in general, if you have a marketplace business where you're thinking about the land and expand kind of strategy, like Uber started in San Francisco, whatever, like the market wedge, so to speak, which I wrote a piece on this. But basically what you want to do is you want to really get it working in your first market. And I think we kind of have it working, but I think there's more we have to do to get it working in our first market. And so we sort of prematurely expanded a little bit. And then now we're kind of like, no, let's do more to get it working in our first market. But that doesn't mean that we'll always stay here. It just means we have to get it working better. And I don't know, maybe that'll take a year, maybe that'll take longer. This is the great thing about the way we raise money, is we're just able to just focus on what's most important at any given time and not worry too much about, somebody breathing down our neck, basically.
It's interesting. I was just going to say, it's very interesting that analogy you used, though, because you did find the short form version, right? You're right? They say what's the usual case for a business book is it's 1/20th of the size is where most of the value is, right? And it's the rest is studies and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
those are cliff notes.
Yeah, in some ways though, the long form posts you have are the short
form books, yeah.
Right? In the business book realm. I love it. That's a great analogy.
Yeah. What are some challenges you're facing at Every right now? Right. Obviously, it is. You've mentioned the writers, curating the writers on there, but as a fledgling media company / tech company, I would consider. What are some of the challenges that you're facing, and how does that reflect the broader creator economy in your opinion?
Yeah. Here are a couple. I actually don't know how it reflects on the broader creator economy. We can try to talk through it. One big thing is we're looking for an editor. It's really hard to find an editor. We've had great editors in the past, but it's just finding someone who really knows the words and really kind of knows how structure works and grammar works and how sentences should flow and all that kind of stuff is hard. But then finding that person intersecting with someone who really deeply understands the topics that we write about, and understands the audience and what's going to be interesting to the reader, it's very rare. Because most of the people who understand the words they're in a different world. They're kind of thinking about different things. And most of the people who understand the ideas are not editors. They're, either maybe they're writers themselves, but more likely they actually just work in the industry.
Right.
So that's a huge challenge. I think another big one for us is the way that we grow primarily is, well, there's a couple of different mechanisms. One is we add writers. Another one is we write things and then put them on Twitter or Hacker News and hope they go viral. And then there's some long tail SEO and all that kind of stuff that kind of snowballs it. But I think something that, and if we want to talk about like broader creator economy stuff, I think this actually does apply. Like something that we found is the last, like around the start of the pandemic, for like a little bit before the pandemic started, and then like for probably the first 6 months of it, newsletters were like outrageously popular. Everyone was signing up for newsletters, and we really rode that wave. And a lot of our like compatriots, our colleagues, also rode that wave. And that was those are big growth moments where it was super easy. And then there was like the crypto wave, and I think there's a lot of big growth moments available to a lot of newsletters on the crypto wave too. And kind of the question is, as a media company or as a creator, it's great to catch a wave, but it's very hard to predict that, and that means that your growth is like kind of hard to understand or make like pull levers to actually like control.
Right.
And so a big thing for us is obviously we want to catch waves. We want to, but you can't really try to catch a wave. You have to write or make things about stuff you care about. That's the only way you're going to have energy. And you're going to hope that you actually make the wave yourself. Like you push people into a topic or an idea or a way of thinking that they weren't thinking about before. And that's how you kind of create one for yourself. But in the meantime, how do you create a sustainable linear growth engine to like keep pushing people to your stuff? That's a really big question. Like, do you run paid ads? If you do, like, where do you put them? Do you do giveaways? Do you like have a referral program? Like, there's all this like stuff that you can do to grow. That's not like basically like hitting the magic button or hitting the jackpot and like riding a wave, you know?
Yeah.
And getting good at that is hard. And that's something that we're basically figuring out how to do.
Very well put. I think when we got started, we didn't even know we were riding a wave. We just thought it was like easy. And then when that wave petered out, the next one was crypto, and none of us that we were really working with like natively were like ready to do what you had to do to ride that wave, which is basically to be like, this is amazing and it's going to change humankind forever. And we just didn't feel that way. We're like, I don't know, it's kind of interesting, kind of like open source in some ways, like does sort of change the world, but also kind of doesn't. And like, no, that's not the most viral message there. And so we caught that wave like a little bit, but not nearly as much as some of the other people who were kind of around at the same time as us, who had a different philosophy about it or a different level of interest in it. And so, and yeah, it's so fascinating to see how people can create these waves too. And like, yeah, just, I think that's such an interesting way of thinking about it. But then even in the absence of a wave, having a well-oiled machine, right, that just spits out growth is like, yeah.
One of the nice things too is because we have multiple writers, we have a lot of different shots on goal.
Right,
and,
with waves.
Yeah, like any particular writer at any given time can catch one, and we have more irons in the fire than an individual creator would. And all of the creators benefit when one of us catches a wave because the audience gets basically shared. So I think that's one other aspect of the model that's pretty cool.
Cool. Greg, do you have any other questions for Dan and Nathan? I know we're running short on time here. If not, I do have one more question I can ask them.
No, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah. So where do you go from here? Right. I mean, you have so many, you're having people subscribe, they're paying, you're curating writers. Where do you go from here? And what advice would you give to writers who may want to go on their own, but feel like they cannot because they need that security of their current full-time job or employment? Nathan, Dan, either one of you to start?
Yeah. It's a really good question. I think like where we go from here, we have I think our dream is that Every becomes an institution in business writing. That we've discovered and defined a kind of business writing for practitioners that we can popularize and make available to like a really, really broad audience and have a place where the best writers come and do the best writing of their lives together. So that's where we're going. And we hope to do that across a wide variety of topics. We're starting with like productivity and strategy and more tech related topics, but like that's the idea overall. In terms of advice for creators, we get that question a lot, and I don't necessarily like have the advice is like simple but very difficult, which is produce a lot of stuff, try really hard to make it good. At the beginning, just produce a lot of stuff and don't care about how good it is. Just like get it out so you can kind of get a feedback loop going over time. Like really start to take feedback and refine like your craft to make it better and to understand what makes things work and what makes things not work, and to be able to listen to like what's inside of you, like what do you want to do. I think also like I see so many people with this idea in their head that they want to be writers that don't like writing. And
That's
yeah, and I think people like I hope those people can feel okay with the fact that they might not like writing, and that's okay, and there might be lots of other things that they do like that they could find. Like maybe you're a podcaster, maybe you like to make videos, maybe you don't like to do long form, you like to tweet. Like there's so many things to do that allow you to have the same kind of things as like get your ideas out, or meet people who are like-minded that writing can be a vehicle for. And I think it's great. Like as many people should be writers as possible. We'd love to work with you, but also like putting that on yourself to like, I have to be a writer, or feeling bad that you're not writing enough. Like actually maybe just find something you do like, and that'll probably work better.
Yep. I think the emotional sustainability is like the key point, basically, because it's like pulling a slot machine lever every time you hit the publish button. And if the only reason you're in it is for the winnings, like, oh, it's just going to be devastating. You're going to be just wrecked emotionally after a while. And you have to actually find the process of creation itself satisfying enough to do it for that and that alone, even if the slot machine is not spitting out something very favorable to you lately, because you're going to go through periods where it's better and where it's worse. And I think it's so much easier to focus on how do I make stuff that I'm proud of, that I enjoy creating, rather than to focus on what the slot machine is giving you today, because there just is a lot of randomness in the feedback you get from the internet. It is not a fair system, it's a chaotic system. And it doesn't mean that you can't make a living off of it, but it does mean it's really hard to pin your self-worth or your emotions on it. And that's the number one thing that most people do, myself included. I want to be really clear. I'm just straight up talking to myself. I'm going to listen to this tomorrow because I'm going to need it when I have to start finishing my essay for the week.
Oh, so how often do you publish, Nathan, yourself? Like as a writer, I mean, you publish. Do you publish like once a week? Do you publish twice a week, or however? Does it vary based on your mood?
I went through a long stretch of it varying based on my mood, and I realized that my mood is not my friend, and so now I publish weekly.
Yeah, I can never. I can always write it up here. Just when I put it onto a keyboard, it never happens. So
right.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is you start typing and then you feel like shit and then you stop. And it's better to just have an advertiser that needs you to publish this week.
The almighty dollar will be enough of a motivation. So thank you, Dan. Thank you, Nathan, for joining us and educating us on what you're doing at Every. Looking forward to seeing more. We'll definitely have to check out more of the writing that is on there. And when you do publish your essay, Nathan, let us know. I'd love to take a look at that and read it as well. And little small note, Nathan also does a podcast with Legion called Means of Creation. How often? That's a weekly podcast. Is that correct, Nathan?
That one's more like every other week.
Every other week. Yeah. So definitely go ahead and check it
out. Now I just remembered your voice. See, like
you knew me from somewhere. That's amazing.
How familiar.
But so people that are interested and want to know more about Every, go to every.2. And that's where you can get more information. And be sure to ping Dan and Nathan if you want to be a writer on there. It's a great platform to check out. And good luck to you both on what happens next.
Thank you so much.
Congrats on the success so far. It's great to watch, and obviously it's amazing content.
Yeah, thank you so much. It means a ton. Thank you for having us. Yeah, bye.
See ya. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. Just a little bit of housekeeping items here. Right now, we are still looking for more guests for Created Economy. We have a bunch more. We have several more in the queue right now. We have Ira Belsky scheduled to come on the show later on. He's the co-CEO of Artlist. We also have Derek Yeung, the lead product manager at Discord. That'll be a great conversation. And for those that are NFT fans and Web3 fans, we are having Daniel Solsberg on the show. He is the freelance illustrator and the creator of Dan Village. Very interested to know how to create an NFT, and especially as that relates to the creator economy. And be sure to tune in also on Tuesdays for Created Works. That's Greg's show. He's going to have a lot of great, amazing guests talking about Web3. And I think you're still trying to build out to mint your own NFT. Is that correct, Greg?
I don't know. We're actually just are mostly interviewing folks at this point. I think we have Women in Vases on next. But yeah, we're booked up through May actually. So yeah, if you are launching a project, especially if you're underrepresented founder, we'd love to have you on.
Yeah, and if you want to be a guest on any of our shows, go to createdeconomy.com/guest list. And with that, we will see you all next time. Be sure to like and subscribe to see our latest podcast videos, and we'll talk to you later.
All right.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.